So I fully admit at the top here that this deep dive may feel convoluted or whatever, but it was sparked by something we touched on in our Ask Us Anything show this week. One of the questions was someone questioning if they're a good person because of just recent complicated dynamics in the world. I'll put it that way. And it reminded me of something I've run into with clients, which is just this more generally this nagging feeling like their good person identity is just a facade or not as true as people think. And they end up feeling unsettled, like this anxiety about the push and pull of the good and the bad parts of who they are. So if that sounds familiar to you, I want to briefly explore that. But I should do a quick caveat. So if you are truly a jerk, this deep dive isn't for you. I'm only interested in talking to people today, or I should say more gently, this topic is only relevant today for people who are trying to be decent human beings. People who are trying to make their way in the world without hurting other people and mostly succeeding at that, not always, but maybe whose self-esteem or feelings about themselves are complicated or distressing sometimes. I think true jerks seem to have plenty of self-esteem, right? Anyway, what I'd like to say is this. You can't outrun the crappy version of yourself that you're afraid you are. Most of us know our worst traits, and we can sometimes have anxiety because we want to think of ourselves as better than we are, but sometimes we're just not. But then we feel defensive and we want to reject or distance ourselves from that crappy version because it makes us feel bad, of course. But true self-esteem is the ability to carry that crappy version around without punishing yourself, while simultaneously appreciating your better version. And people like to say, love your messy parts. But I don't know. I don't believe you have to go that far. I'd say the key is to not let your self-worth fluctuate depending on which part of you dominates that day. If you are striving to be a decent person, if you're generally not an asshole, then your self-esteem needs to be more of a fixed entity. And when your messy parts do flare up, hold yourself accountable. But don't chip away at or doubt your value as a human. That crappy version of you can be an alert or an alarm bell to remind you to tap back into your decent parts. I think so much of our unconscious anxiety is about that dissonance of wanting to be a certain person and being scared that we aren't that great after all. And that's okay, that's human. Today, I'm just suggesting that it might be a relief to you to understand that you're not the piece of shit you have a sneaking suspicion you might be just because you sometimes screw up. Some days you're going to be 51 to 49, angel to demon, because life. But how about if we make the goal more than 50% decent human being more than 50% of the time? And I know some folks out there might think that's too low a bar and lets way too many real jerks off the hook. And I see that point. But I also think I see too many people in my practice that are killing themselves emotionally, trying to strive for like zero flaws or zero mistakes. And I think if we set the bar at a reasonable level to start, that can help us build confidence through exceeding it most of the time. And as I said, you don't have to love your messy parts. You do have to own them, though. And you have to be honest about whether they're tipping the scales too much. And use them as a catalyst to realign yourself when you feel who you are and who you think you are or who you want to be are too different. Like Kelly said on the show, the fact that the listener was even questioning this and trying to self-reflect already shows a good faith attempt to not be a jerk. So I guess my main takeaway is that if you doubt your decency or struggle with self-esteem, make sure you're not giving more weight to the crappy version than you do to the better version, and that you're being honest about your percentages. And the more you align who you behave as with who you think you are, the less you'll doubt who the real you is. All right, that's it for this deep dive. If you want to hear more on this topic or be a guest on the show, email us at the unrelatingpodcast@gmail.com and make sure to check us out and interact on our socials. We like to hear from you.